Okay, welcome to another great podcast. We got Coach Dion. We got a fantastic guest on today. I have his book on the triple option right out of gun. Okay, and I'm not sure if Coach D has read it before, but
Come on now.
long time, wildly successful coach Coach Tony Demeo. Welcome to the podcast. Uh, as soon as Coach D told me that he had you on, I was jumping out of my seat because I read your about when I first became a head coach back in 2004. I was an assistant under the Navy spread triple option at a high school, the high school actually that I went to, and we were wildly successful. Well, I wanted to kind of move that back to the gun, and your book came up right away. I don't know. I don't remember if it was a Championship Productions or which site I grabbed it off of back in the day, but I grabbed that book and I read it, and that was my first foray into running like shotgun spread option, and a lot of the things that you had with the two backs. I originally utilized, and then I kind of evolved, my own system from there. But so when he said we had you on, I was super excited. Couldn't wait to talk to you. I follow your stuff on Twitter, your breakdowns and I love the drawings.
I know. I do the best I can with that.
Yeah, well, that's obviously hard. It's hard to draw the picture, So
it's a lot different than the overhead projector now, Coach.
Right.
So Coach, how many years we're talking? 40 years as a head coach, or close to
25 as a head college coach and 40 years as a college coach.
Okay, and played his football at Iona. We were just talking offline. He's the youngest head coach in Iona history. At 25 years old. Coach, bring us through your career and kind of how you started to. I mean, you can take us wherever you want to go with this. We'll ride with you.
I was going to be a high school coach, and the fellow that I was working for, Augie Otiri, wanted to run the wishbone. Well, I was an eye tailback. I had no idea how to run the wishbone. So I did the normal thing. I wrote a letter to Darryl Royal asking how to do it. And I didn't realize I was too stupid to know that you don't do that. You don't just write Darryl Royal a letter. But I did. I wrote him a letter, and he invited me down to Texas's spring practice. Again, I was too stupid to know you don't really do that. You don't take that invitation up, but I did. I went down to Texas, marched into Coach Royal's office and said, I'm Tony Demeo and here to see Coach Royal. And the secretary said, is he expecting you? And I said, yes.
Yeah.
Because I thought he was, Anyway, he was awesome. He came out, hugged me like I was his long-lost nephew, and brought me into his assistant coaches and told them that he wanted them to take good care of me. And when I left there, he wanted me to be an expert on the wishbone. And I couldn't believe he was so friendly. He was unbelievable. So Fred Akers was the offensive coordinator at the time. Willie Zaplak was the line coach. R.M. Patterson was the receiver coach. And they took me under their wing. The only thing they told me, the meeting started at 7. I was to be there early. And I was. And I took so many notes, legal pads, that I left some clothes in Texas just so I could pack them in my suitcase. Yeah, I mean, it was unbelievable. And then during practice, Coach Royal would come on the field and put his arm. Now, meanwhile, there was coaches from like Oklahoma State, every place, and New Mexico, Oklahoma State, high schools. And he would come over, put his arm around me, and walk me out to behind the huddle to watch practice. So people thought that, people were like, oh, who is this guy? And I remember coming off, and there was a coach from Oklahoma and said, hey, who are you? How did you get in with? I said, I'm a nobody. I said, no one knows me. I said, But he took me under his wing, and I spent 2 weeks there, and I really learned the wishbone inside and out. And Roosevelt Leaks was their star at the time. And Coach Royal was hard on Roosevelt Leaks. I mean, he demanded a lot from Leaks. And that was a lesson in itself. Watching Coach Royal run practice, he didn't say much, but when he said something,
gospel.
Things changed. You know, he gets after Roosevelt Leaks and said one time he ran a play and he turned to Akers and he said, "Get me a fullback that runs with some authority." And for the next 5 plays, Roosevelt Leaks' bodies were flying because he was running like a wild man. So I learned a lot more than just X's and O's around those guys. I learned about coaching, and then I came back to do the high school job because now I learned the wishbone. And when I got back, this is before cell phones and voicemails and all that stuff. By the time I got back, there was 2 job offers for me. One was at Pace University, and one was at Fordham University, they were assistant coaches from Iona that went on to be head coaches, and they both offered me a job. So I checked that. Fordham was a little more money, but the Giants were training at Pace. At the time. So I felt like going to Pace, I would study the Giants while I was there, and I did. I shadowed Bill Arnsparger, who was the head coach. He took a step to the right. I took a step to the right. He took a step to the left. I was like his shadow. And he took to me, liked me, and really kind of gave me a lot of insight into football. He was a defensive-minded guy, and he would want me to watch defense and talk defense. And I said, well, I'm really offensive, and I want to learn offense. And he said, you can't you can't coach offense if you don't know defense. And he was 100% right. I didn't realize it at the time, but he was exactly right. If you don't know defense, you cannot coach offense. So anyway, that was the start. And then I was at Pace for 2 years, and then the job at Iona opened up. I didn't apply. I never thought in a million years they're going to hire a 25-year-old that doesn't know anything. But nobody wanted the job. Hence, I got offered the job. I mean, I think they offered a guy that made pizzas on North Avenue, another guy, a busboy. And then when they all refused it, I got the job. And we were picked last in our conference, finished second the first year, and won the next 2 years. Was undefeated my 3rd year. Was coach of the year twice. I was 26 years old, so by the time I was 27, I had already been coach of the year twice. So I thought this is a pretty easy gig. I mean, I didn't realize that it was a long time.
Talk about getting a false sense of reality, huh?
I thought this was the easiest thing ever. And as a matter of fact, I never forget one time I was sitting in my cubicle. We didn't have offices, but by the way, the guy in the next cubicle was Jim Valvano, who was coaching at Iona at the time.
Wow.
We became great friends. And he had a great influence on me. I'll get to in a minute. But one of my players walked in, this kid who's a little bit of a wise guy, New York wise guy. And I was holding 2 Coach of the Year trophies in my hand. And I looked at him, I said, "Hey, Paulie," I said, "how many great young coaches do you think there are in the country?" And he looked at me, he said, "1 less than you do." I thought that was pretty funny.
That is funny.
So anyway, and that was my first head coaching job, and Valvano was a huge, huge help to me. He's the one where I learned about the clock, the importance of the clock, and how the clock can be your friend, especially if you're an underdog. In my first year, we were underdogs against we could have played the Sisters of the Poor. We'd have been underdogs, and but as I said, we finished second, but we played boring football. I mean, we played stall ball. And Valvano said, you got to play 4 corners and take shorten the game.
Right.
And he said,
right.
This is a Valvano quote, "He who controls the pace wins the race." Ironically, in 1983, that's how he won the national championship.
Yeah.
Remember it was 52-51, I think.
Yep.
Right. Everybody was
Score
trying to
on the
go
last
fast
play of the
and do
game.
all that. Yeah. Everybody was trying to move the ball, go fast, and he took it and just slowed it down.
Slowed it down to a crawl. And then the other quote he said was, "The only lead that matters is the one at the end of the game." He said, "Just hang close against a really good team and try to grab the win at the end of the game." Again, that's exactly what happened when he was at North Carolina State. The last play of the game was a walk-off, dunk. So anyway, I learned a ton from him about recruiting. Here's another one. He said, it's like putting stones in a jar. Put the big stone in first, then the small ones, then the pebbles, then the sand, then water, and you'll fill up the jar. If you put the little ones in first, you'll never get the big one in. And again, that's how he recruited. When he was at Iona, he recruited Jeff Rulin. Jeff Rulin turned everything around for him at Iona. And anyway, so that was my start in coaching.
Wow.
And then from there, I went to, and that was a great start because I had an influence of Arnsparger, an influence of Valvano. And from there, I went to the University of Pennsylvania.
Ooh, little Ivy League action.
A little Ivy League. And I was an assistant for Harry Gamble. And Harry Gamble, when I went there, I knew how to coach. Harry Gamble taught me how to be a coach, which is a difference. And he was a great influence on me. He's the most organized human at that time I'd ever seen. And it wound up leaving Penn to be the CEO, general manager, and president of the Philadelphia Eagles. And I worked for him, and I learned a ton from him. And then went on to be the head coach at Mercyhurst College. And Mercyhurst, their AD was a Queens guy, so he knew me a little bit. He was a baseball coach. He knew me a little bit from the New York area. And he called me, and they were starting football. It had been an all-girls school. My first year, I thought it still hadn't changed over, but that's another story. So, but anyway,
We've all been there.
They wanted to start the program, so I was hired to start the program from scratch. As a matter of fact, there's a fellow, Rob Anderson, who's doing the book on this, and he interviews me every Friday at 3:00.
Nice.
But and it's going to be a good book. But so I took the job there, and the first year I played a varsity schedule with only freshmen.
Ooh.
Only freshmen, and we went 4-2-1. Luckiest team that ever lived. I mean, we beat a Division II team, Glenville State, where Rodriguez was from. And on homecoming, we were 30-point underdogs against this Division II team. We had only freshmen. They had beards. They had shaved heads. My guys were petrified. I had Mark Stepnowski, the center for the Cowboys?
Yep.
He was my ball boy. But anyway, his older brother played for me, and he came up to me before the game, and his name was Mick Stepnowski. He's huge, 6'5", 270-pound freshman. And he came up to me and he said, "Coach, these guys are really ugly." I said, "Mick, I want you to block them, not date them."
Yeah.
Anyway, we upset them 14-7 on 2 block punts in the last 3 minutes of the game.
Wow.
I mean, unbelievable. We had one punt block on the whole playbook, and we worked the first time, and I said, well, surely they're going to block it right this time. But they didn't. They blocked it the exact same way, and we blocked another punt. Scooped and scored, and we wound up winning 14-7. So anyway, we went 4-2-1 that year. And then the next year, we beat the number 6 ranked team in the country, Gettysburg, at Gettysburg. And then by the 4th year, we were really good. By year 4, we beat Widener at Widener. It was the first home loss for Widener in 8 years when they had Bill Mamlove, Hall of Fame coach. Then the next year, we beat Dayton at Dayton. So we beat 2 number 1 teams in the country back to back. They were both Division III powers back in the day. And then we played Villanova twice. We were Division III. They were 1AA. We lost by a touchdown both times, 42-35 and 35-27. And then I left there. So I left there and went to Temple as an offensive coordinator. And that didn't last long. And then I left there and went to Delaware, which I ran into another great mentor, Tubby Raymond.
Oh.
Tubby Raymond was one of the great coaches that ever lived. I think he was a football genius. And he hired me to put the triple option in with the wing T.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah. He brought me down there, and I had carte blanche on the option game. I could done whatever I wanted. And Billy Vergantino was the quarterback, and I installed it. They had struggled the last 2 years on offense. They went under 300 yards both years in total offense. First time in Tubby's reign there. And what he told me was that the difference between what I was doing and what he did was his was based on the next play. Like, in other words, if they do this, we do this.
Right.
Where what I was doing, the play changed based on what the defense did. So that's what intrigued him about bringing me down there. Now, during the course of my year down there, he called me a Bolshevik and a radical and insane and other names. But like, for example, on the down option, Coach, you probably know the down option, the reverse out and the fake and all that. I told Vergantino not to ride the fullback. I said, just flash fake the fullback and let the fullback become a blocker. So the first time Tubby saw that, he went crazy. And I said, I told him to do that. And he glared at me.
Right, because he watched all those fakes. That's right.
Yeah, he was not happy. And then a little bit later in the scrimmage, we ran cross block option to the split end. Well, Vergantino told me when he reversed out to that, if they came with pressure off the edge, he had a hard time getting rid of the ball because they were right on top of him.
Right, they were there right now.
Yeah, so I said, no, don't open up. Don't reverse out. Do it like you're running the triple. So he did. So Tubby saw that and he goes, what the heck are you doing? And I said, I told him that. I told him to do that.
Not me. That's me.
That'd be me. I did that. So he walks back to me and he goes, are you going to screw up the entire offense or are you going to stick to one area? But I had a great time. I learned a ton from him. And then that was one of my really most enjoyable times, years of coaching. And then the next year I went to James Madison as their offensive coordinator, and we beat Navy at Navy.
Ooh, that's nice.
On homecoming.
Ooh,
and they were 5-2.
Well, of course they made you guys homecoming, right?
Yeah, the big thrill was Roger Staubach and Joe Bellino were there for the coin toss. I almost ran out and asked them for their autographs, but I figured that wouldn't be good. But we beat them. And then the next year I went to UMass with Jim Reed up there. And then I went to Murray State in Kentucky. I was one of 10 Italians in the whole city of Murray, Kentucky. 6 were under my roof. They called my house Little Italy. Yeah. My first week down there, I was sitting at a counter in a diner. This guy walks up to me and he says, you're the new coach at Murray State, aren't you? I said, yes, I am. I was the offense coordinator there. And he said, we don't get many Italians down here. I said, that's because they're all in Italy. That's where they hang out in Italy. So I had a great time down there. And everybody thought I had a really bad New York accent, but I didn't. I never thought I did. But like when I went through the McDonald's, to give my order into the clown head, the clown head knew who I was. Just by my accent. So anyway, I spent a year at Murray, and then I went to Then I went out to Kansas to Washburn University. I spent a bunch as a head coach. I spent a bunch of time out there, and that's when I started to develop the gun triple and the triple gun offense. Because we were out of the 8 years I was there, 4 times the national champs came from our conference, and we had the lowest budget, the fewest scholarships, and the worst facilities in the league. So
And
I
that
had to
was
do something
and that was
different.
what level? Washburn was what level? Division 3, 2,
Division 2.
2.
Division
Was
2.
that
I mean,
during?
we had to play Northwest Missouri,
Well,
Pittsburgh
now it
State.
makes sense to me. Your relationship with Coach Manny is obviously because he was at Emporia, right?
Right. We played against each other.
Yeah, I mean
But
he
knew me before then.
The running back Shea, right, who was an
He was
absolute
great.
freak of
He
nature.
was a nightmare. I used to have nightmares about him. he was more scared of me than Dracula. I mean, it was like he was a great player. Manny's a great coach, but I knew him before then. We knew each other before. He was at Hofstra. We had run into each other a few times.
Got it.
And
Okay.
but I did learn the jet sweep series from him that I put in with the gun triple. And but anyway, I developed the gun triple, and and then from there I went to Richmond. Interesting thing, Jackie Sherrill brought me down to Mississippi State for 3 days and wanted me to go there and put the gun triple in. His college roommate was a high school coach who won the Alabama State Championship and had visited me and put in the triple gun from that visit and won the championship. So that's how Jackie Sherrill knew about this. And he brought me down there, treated me great. And they had a great staff. They had Sparky Woods, Rocky Fella, Curly Holloman, Jolie Dunn. They had a great coaching staff down there, but they couldn't win. And he told me, he said they had to do something radically different because they couldn't do what Alabama did and beat Alabama. They couldn't do what Ole Miss did and beat Ole Miss.
Right. They couldn't line up in that conventional way and just bang away like, hey, these are your
They-
guys.
they-
These are our. Yeah. They had to get some type of angle.
They had to do something different. Like, for
Right.
example, we had 490 yards against Northwest Missouri when they won the national championship and lost by a touchdown.
Mm.
And nobody had over 300 against them. They had a great defense. And then Willie Fritz was at Central Missouri at the time.
Oh,
the same
okay.
thing. They had the number one rush defense in the country, 70 yards a game. And my quarterback had 90 in the first quarter when we played him. So it was radically different. Nobody really knew what I was doing. At times I didn't know what I was doing, but it was working. And it was, when I did it, when I went to it, I knew option guys like Ken Hatfield, Fisher DeBerry, and those guys. I knew them pretty well. Very well. And they thought I was insane. They thought I had lost my mind because we had just set the school total offense record under center, running the triple. But Willie Fritz blitzed us in a way that we couldn't block the blitz, so it took away the entire passing game. But when I went in the gun, it worked because our fullback could get ahead of the quarterback.
Yes.
Like if they double A gap blitz and you're under center, you have to gap block it. Otherwise, you have to change. And if their defensive ends were great, you're in trouble. The only way you can block it is on the blackboard, but not on or a whiteboard. But you can't block it on the field, I'll guarantee you. So anyway, we went in the gun. I talked to Rich Rodriguez, who's helpful, and Kevin Wilson, who at the time were running the option, but the zone read. And I really didn't like the zone read out of it because squeeze and scrape would cause a problem.
Yeah,
and
guys coming over the top.
If your base play is getting stopped by a simple thing, then that can't be your base play.
We have an issue. We gotta do something about this.
Yeah, so that's when I thought you could take the whole flex bone basically and back it up. And boy, was I wrong about that. That was it didn't work. We couldn't move the ball the length of this room that I'm in, and I'm not in a big room. And as I said, we had just set the school total offense record the year before. So my assistants were really wondering whether I had really lost my mind. Everybody was, basically. But on the 13th practice of spring practice, the light bulbs went on and it just clicked. And then they all became believers. And then, but I said to them, I said, look, if it doesn't work, the kids still know the under center stuff. We can go back in preseason and revert, if it doesn't work.
Right. We still have what we need. And, the foundation of what we need is there. This is something we're attempting, we're trying, right? So it's not, this isn't the end all be all. We still have this kind of, like under the trapeze, right? We still have our little safety net here.
Yeah, that's
so we're
exactly
good to go.
Right. And the first year, every time we ran gun triple, we averaged 8.1 a try. I've never run a play like that. I mean, because the cutback was killing people.
Right.
And you can't cut back.
Everybody was over
center.
pursuing and going, and now it's
right. And that under center, you can't cut back. And then we started throwing flash, the quick screen, or the people call it the now screen or whatever.
Yep.
That became the quarterback's first read. So it was 8 between the slots, throw quicks and hots. That was his rule. So if he saw like an 8-man front where they packed the box, we threw flash and went
throw right now
the corner. Yeah. And that changed everything. All of a sudden we were the one of the best offenses in the conference, and giving Pitt and Northwest Missouri all they could handle on trying to stop us. So that made us really competitive against everybody, and that's what Cheryl brought me down there. And Jim Reed had left UMass and was now the head coach at Richmond, and he offered me a job before Jackie Sherrill. And my wife wanted to go to Richmond because my daughter was at the University of Maryland at the time, and it was close. It was a couple hours. So I said to her, well, the money is a little bit better at Mississippi State, like double. And she said, she said, you go there, but I want to stay close to my daughter. So I turned down the job. Jackie Sherrill was great, though. I mean, I can't say enough great things about the guy. And he was so intense. I mean, you talk about going through legal pads. He would go through legal pads, and on their board, he would have his assistant Xerox what he was saying, Xerox the board. Copy the board, print it out. All my drawings he printed out. And it was a really good experience. And I got along great with those guys. So I went to Richmond for a couple of years and then became the head coach at the University of Charleston. And, I was intrigued by Charleston because everybody said you can't win at a private school in a public league in Division II because of the price is too different.
Right.
So that kind of, when people say that to me, it's almost like putting a red flag in front of a bull.
It's a challenge.
Coach Gamble told me not to take the Mercier's job because you won't be able to win there. And by the time you can win there, they're going to want a new coach, which was, again, the red flag in front of the bull. Bingo, I'm at Mercier's.
Yeah.
So
it's that competitor in you, Coach. It's that competitor. Tell me no, or tell me I can't do something, and
I'm going to prove you wrong.
Yep. It's the Italian, man.
It's that Italian stuff.
It is. I got the same disease, Coach.
I know. Those Italians, you got to watch them. And so anyway, things were. I always say I got there, and things were so bad. Kevorkian was the team doctor. He was. Let me tell you, it was bad. Not only couldn't they play. So listen, this will explain it. I'm watching film, and the AD comes in, and he said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "This is the worst team I've ever seen in my life, at any level." And he said, "Well," and he was a little upset that I said that, but he says, "Well, I'll tell you one thing. They played with courage." And he said, "There's fear." They didn't know the meaning of the word fear. And I said, "Well, after seeing their transcripts, that's only one word they didn't know there's a lot of words they didn't know the meaning of because they had a 1-6. our team GPA was a 1.6. Not only couldn't they play, they were terrible in school. I mean, it was so anyway, but they really bought into what I was selling. And we started my first team meeting. We had 59 guys, and the team GPA was 1.6. And I laid down the law. I made them go to 3 tutoring sessions a week, mandatory. They didn't. They ran stadium steps, and we had an 18,000 seat stadium.
Oh, that's nice.
So anyway, so my goal was to build that team by getting good grades and forming habits of excellence. I wanted them to have pride in their grades, like pride in their work.
Absolutely,
their weights and things like that. They had never had a weight program. Our first run, I call it run to win, morning runs. I covered the upstairs, the gym in vomit. I mean, they were rolling around in their own. They were never gone through anything like that. So we started my first team meeting. I had 59 players. By the start of spring practice, I had 40. I had run 19 off, and yeah, and
hey,
we were down to 5 linemen.
You got to do it. It's part of it. You got to set the tone.
My goal every time I took over a program, I weeded the garden first before I planted new seed. So we were down to 5 offensive linemen, and I see this big kid. This is this is in workouts, not even in the spring practice. So I see this big kid in the hallway. I said, "Hey, how come you're not in the weight room?" He said, "Oh, coach, I'm not a football player. I'm the mascot." I said, "You're the mascot?" He's a big, good-looking kid, I said, "You're the Golden Eagle?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Do they pay you to wear the feathers and everything?" He said, "No." I said, "Well, I'll pay you to put football equipment on and play." He goes, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, wow." So I take him down the weight room, introduce him to the line coach, and I said, "This is your new offensive lineman." He goes, "Oh, great. So where'd you play last year?" I said, "Hey, I don't want a bio. Just get him some gear and get him started in the weight room." So a couple of days later, he comes in my office. He goes, the kid's name was Hudell Hamilton. He said, "Coach, you know where Hudell played last year?" I said, "Yeah, he's the mascot here." He goes, "You knew?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, I said, "Yeah, but if you're half the coach I think you are,
there you go.
Do something with him."
There you go.
The kid wound up starting at right tackle for us, and we led the conference in rushing.
And my man had a free education.
No other proof of the value of the gun triple and the triple gun offense. So anyway, and then we had a great run at Charleston. We won 41. We were 41-20, 44. 22 and 42-22. Yeah. 44-22 at Charleston. Had a great run, the most victories over the 6 years in the school history. And that takes us, then I retired. I was 61 and retired. I didn't want to die. I didn't want to retire and die. I wanted to
you want to have some time to do something.
Swim and do stuff.
Right.
Not where I was a basket case at the end of the, So anyway, that's where we are. And then I started doing. People wanted to run the triple gun, so I've done 89 camps since I retired, where I would go to the high school, install the offense, and then they would run it. So, and in that time, I did 89, 9, 6, 6. First year, they were really proud of that. And you talked about my book. I'm doing another one is being published, and it's completely unique, and it's called Tony Demeo's Triple Gun Offense and the Evolution of Option Football.
Oh,
and what I do is I take it. Yeah, it's really pretty good, and I take it from the split back veer, which is the first I ever heard of it, to the triple gun and the present and the RPOs and all that stuff. I ran RPOs. I just didn't know they were RPOs.
Right.
Like the Flash. was an RPO, really.
Right, and
So
that's
anyway,
something that's literally, it's crazy to look at it now, and you think that flash screen is something that's a staple in every program across the country, no matter what level it is. Everybody's got that check.
Well, Bill Yeoman ran the RPOs on the dump pass. It was either pitch or throw the dump.
The old pot pass, yeah.
Pardon?
The old tight end, right.
Yeah, he just didn't know it was an RPO. Somebody got clever. And
and none of these guys are getting credit for it.
No.
That's the old Houston Veer, right? That's
Yes, exactly. So anyway, I take it from that all the way to the present. And in the meantime, I have a flex loan playbook in there, basically, with diagrams and stuff, and then a triple gun playbook. Now, here's where it gets different. With every diagram is a video that goes along with it.
Wow.
So I'm doing it two ways, digitally. So you have the link there, and you see the diagram. You hit the link, and it'll take you to a video. And on the hard copy, I use QR codes. So it's the diagram, a QR code. So you see the diagram, and then there's a video that goes along with it. So, and it really came out pretty well, pretty good. I mean, and one of the things is you can get a lot of football books, and there's a million diagrams, but the guys have written football books that I've never seen them run some of the diagrams they've got in there. You know, it's easy to draw a diagram. It's another thing to see the play. So if I say gun triple against a 3-4, you're going to see the gun triple against a 3-4. You may see a couple of them against the 3-4. If I say gun triple against a 4-4, you'll see that play against that defense. And that's unique. I've never heard of that before. And so I'm pretty excited about that. I think it's going to be a good thing.
What have you found are the advantages of the triple gun versus, let's say, the flex bone? The different options, like what are the pros and cons? I mean, like split back veer, I think right now is probably only run by like John Curtis, which is one of the most successful high schools. But John Curtis runs it forever, right? And they
Bill Regan up at Morris Knowles, he's just out now, and then
he runs split veer.
Right, yeah, he was split. I mean, Homedale a little bit, right, when we played them.
Oh yeah, you're right. They were split veer. You're right. Yes,
because he came from that tree.
Yeah, what the gun. Here's what the gun. Now look at I loved the under center triple, and I coached it for 25 years before I got into this. But here's what this does. I'm going to give you first of all, the gun triple is easier for the quarterback to read because he's off the line. Mm-hmm. Secondly, because he's off the line and the play takes more, when you use smart splits, which is a big part of the offense, you move the handoff key out. Or you put the handoff, you're using the splits against a defense that's very difficult to handle for the defense. If they cut, because everybody says when they see the big splits, like when I talk in clinics, they say, "Oh, I'll just shoot those guys," and I'll say the same thing every time. Oh, thank God I never coached against you because nobody ever thought of that. You figured it out in 5 seconds.
Great job, man!
All these years, never got it. I said, God bless it. I'm so lucky I never coached against you. But anyway, the only place you can go, you say like. The rule is if you're covered, you widen a step. If you're uncovered, you tighten. So if you're in a 1 and a 5 technique, the tackle would be wide, the guard would be tight.
Right.
If the guard is tight, the tackle is wide. If the guard is wide, the tackle is tight. So against the 3 technique, the guard would widen and the tackle would tighten. So you're always in position to double team.
Yep.
And that was the big thing. Seams and double teams is what I was looking for.
And the split thing, right, is something I learned playing at Butler when Manny would come in and he'd talk about accordion splits, right? So we'd be 2x2 spread in an even set, and our tackles would be standing next to the slot receivers, and we'd have gaps all over the place, and people would be like, "Well, what are you doing?" And it just opened that box up for us, you know.
That's exactly right. I mean that was a big thing. And in the gun, we under center, we couldn't throw flash because it would get batted down.
Okay.
It did every time I tried to do it. The idea was right, but I just didn't have the way of teaching it better. Yeah, we couldn't execute it. Again, we could do it on the board, but not on the field. So that was the first thing I noticed with this, is that I could throw flash, which now kept the box open against an 8-man front. You couldn't bring that outside backer into the box
because he had to worry about that happening.
Because he had to worry about flash. So they would apex that between the slot and the wideout. That kept him out of the run game. And why that's important is because the way teams would defend us in say a 4-4, the good teams like Pitt, Northwest Missouri, they would take the two inside backers and scrape them to motion. So we would seal the first one, but the second one would be hard to handle.
Right.
Okay. But in the gun, the fullback or the tailback, I call him the tailback because nobody wanted to play fullback. No, the only guys that wanted to play fullback were guards.
Yeah.
So he became a tailback.
Hey, when Dave, because Dave played at UConn, so he went in there. He was a tailback, and now all of a sudden they made him a fullback. And it was like, wow.
Most depressing day of my life.
So anyway, what happened with the tailback? He could cut back into backside B gap.
Right.
And there's nobody there because the guy who should have been there is out apexing the flash. So you see how that's tied together.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that happened in the gun is we always block gap. Now, Coach McNally, I spoke at his retreat a couple of years, twice, and he was intrigued with our blocking scheme. And it was seams and double teams. It was double team unless. Now, he calls it duo now.
Yeah.
Right.
Duo blocking. But it's really the shotgun veer blocking is what it is, except that they block the handoff key. But we would get movement on the nose. We would have two double teams, or we'd always be blocking gaps. Now, what that did was it looked exactly like play action pass and the run blocking looked exactly the same. Now, when we defended flexbone teams, I had the safety key the backside tackle. If he turned back, it was pass. If he zoned, it was run.
Yep.
And that's how he played it. Well, you couldn't do that in the gun. That was gone. And my first year at Charleston, we played a team that was picked second in the conference that year, West Virginia Wesleyan. And they were beating us 24-6 at half.
Oof.
And we came back and won 39-34. But the significance of that was we threw for 404 yards to come back and rushed for 2.25. Both the total offense and the passing were school records, and they had been running the air raid before I got there. But I don't know many option teams under center that could throw for 404 yards.
Right. I don't know many option teams that throw for 2.
3. I mean, we could throw for 3 on a pretty regular basis. And as a matter of fact, one of my quarterbacks at Charleston still holds the Division II record in pass efficiency, Durante Hunter. And Durante was 5'7", 175 pounds, and nobody recruited him as a quarterback but me. And I saw him, he went to Sarasota Booker High School in Florida, and I saw him play in the state championship game, and he was great. And what the smart splits did was gave him lanes to throw the ball through.
Yeah.
He didn't throw over defenders.
No. And listen, it's so funny. It's crazy to hear you talk about this stuff because everything that you're saying about, all of this stuff, I mean, listen, Butler High School, we never had a quarterback that was over 5'8". So it was always, look, we see it, but we just can't, it was tough to see it. You'd have to, so those accordion splits and creating those gaps and that separation, little half roll action gave us those throwing lanes where now this guy who normally can't just, straight drop back and see now can see everything. And now we can get some positive plays.
Yeah, Durante really, he was great. He was fast as could be. I mean, he was, but he also was smart and could throw. So he became he was like just adapted to this great. And
he was
anyway,
probably loving life, saying, "Hey, I get to play quarterback. Nobody else wanted me to play quarterback. Let's go."
Even when I announced him at the press conference, one of the writers raised their hand and said, "How are you going to play a 5'7" quarterback?" I said, "As long as he doesn't have to rebound, we'll be all right."
And if he does, I'll call my friend Jim Valvano and he'll teach him.
Yeah, he was really good. And we had some big quarterbacks too, but my first quarterback I had at Charleston, and that was the other thing we were talking about. If you're under center, we were talking about the advantages of the gun. When you're under center, the quarterback has to run east and west to circle the defense, so he has to have speed. My first quarterback at Charleston, I beat in a 20-yard dash at 55 years old for a chicken parm sub, and I ate it in front of him. Yeah, he was so. Let me tell you, he was a great. When we wound up going 8-3 with him, he was 6'4", 220, great kid, straight A student. Could throw. They called him the Ripley rifle. He had a gun for an arm, but he raced a pregnant lady, came in third. That's his speed. But in the gun, you're going north and south,
right,
at the pitch key,
right,
not east and west, and that's another. So you can play a slower quarterback.
So you're explain that. So you're going north and south at, you mean on an angle? You're coming downhill at
In other words, if you look at where he lines up in the shotgun, 4 yards behind the center,
right.
When he approaches the pitch key, he's not going
downhill.
East and west. He's going downhill.
Right.
So a bigger, slower quarterback can play. Now, we told that kid, Corey Eisner was his name, that the big kid. I said, I don't want you to run the ball because I don't want to get delays of game. I want the ball pitched. So make that guy play you. So just on the approach, if you can visualize this, that downhill approach, they have to play him. You see what I mean?
Right, he's coming at you now. Like, what are you gonna? You're just gonna let him go?
Yeah,
no, you've got
to. And he was big enough and strong enough that he would be tough to bring down. Now Durante Hunter used his speed. He got to the pitch key in a heartbeat,
right,
and would fake the pitch and keep it and do things.
Do one of those and go.
Yeah, he rushed for 900 yards his senior year, over 900. So he was really good. And the other thing about the gun triple and the triple gun and running from the shotgun is they don't take as big of hits.
No,
because they have a better vision of things. And under center, if the thing that always caused Paul Johnson, who's a great under center coach, and
Georgia Tech,
and I knew Mike Seawalk really well, and Jeff Munkin, who's now at Army, I knew those guys. And what caused them problems with two techniques, because they would push their guards into the backfield, and the quarterback would have to run that little hump.
Right, you have to kind of bubble a little bit.
Yeah, and the gun that doesn't happen. He's beyond the hump, number one, and number two, those guys are always going to be double teamed. So there was a lot of advantages to it. And here's the funny thing about that, coach, is a lot of these advantages, they weren't pre-thoughts. I realized it as we went on. I was learning it as
you were going, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't like I had all these answers.
It's like being a first-year teacher. First-year teacher, I'm one chapter ahead of the kids.
I was one chapter ahead. And then the other thing, I was really fortunate. I had a great tailback. His name was Brandon Rayner.
Always helps, right? Always helps when you can turn around and hand it to somebody.
He was 5'11", 225, and could dunk, a tomahawk dunk. He was recruited by Auburn and Ole Miss. Noel Mazzoni, who's a good friend of mine.
Oh, come on!
You know him?
The end zone offense, the end zone.
Yeah, Noel and I are really good friends.
Yeah, and, I coached for 4 years within that system when I was up in North Jersey at Mount Olive. Brian O'Connor, who was at Wayne Valley, he loved it.
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine, but he called me up and he said, "Do you need a good running back?" I said, "I can always use a good running back." And he said, "Well, I have one, and we can't get him because he doesn't have 800 on the SATs." So I got him and redshirted him, and then he became a great running back. And he's the one that taught me the cutback. You know, he was the first guy to do that.
Because like you said, you're learning as you go. All right, hey, this is set up for how it to be. But sometimes it's like, you know, these guys just do things and you're like, oh, okay, we can get that, right? But had you not had a kid like that or taken a chance on a kid like that with an 800 on his SAT, you know, now you don't have that option. And now all of a sudden he comes in and, hey, maybe we can do this too.
Well, when I talked to the people in admissions at Washburn, he majored in criminal justice. I said, okay, so his SATs are low, but he's built like an Adonis. Who would you rather have guarding you? Him being a cop, him or some guy that has great SATs?
Right.
And they said, yeah, that makes sense. So anyway, but he was great. So he would cut back like in practice. I said, Brandon, what made you cut back? He said, well, I saw a linebacker go over because he's deep.
Right.
He's like an eye tailback.
Yeah.
He can see that.
What's he at? Like 6 yards?
He's at 6. The quarterback's at 4. So he could see that as in a 2-point stance,
right?
Not like an under center fullback, a wishbone or flexbone fullback runs a track. What Brandon taught me was you run a cavity, B gap to B gap.
Nice.
Now that makes the tailback way more effective than an under center fullback. Now the disadvantage is it's a slower play.
Right. Because it has to develop. You have
moves.
to see things.
See? So under center is like a fastball. In the gun, it's like a Mariano Rivera cutter. Oof. It moves. You don't know where the ball is going to pop out of. So anyway, those are some of the advantages I found when I put this together.
How do you handle the geniuses that blitz your open gaps? So,
well, first one thing is you look at the open gap. So if you're the 1 and 5 side, the only open gap is B, right? So if the end jumps into B gap, the tackle always blocks B. He has B gap, no matter who's there. Right. So he washes them down. The tailback will pick up the linebacker and you pitch off the end and then get the pitch off the outside backer who's ever out there.
Right.
And get the PAT team ready.
Right.
Okay. And then to the 3 technique side, right?
Right.
So the only open gap is A gap.
Right.
The only guy that can jump in there is the 3 technique. Right. So if he goes in A gap, your guard is just going to block down on him. Now your tackle has an open shot at the linebacker. Wouldn't you rather have that as a front to block than a 3 technique with a stack backer?
Right.
So those are the only 2 open gaps. So the geniuses that are jumping in the gaps aren't really helping themselves.
Right. They're just creating another opening, a bigger, wider opening.
Right. They're giving you more of what you want.
Right. Right. Exactly. What as far as passing game goes, besides a quick game, like what are some of the things that you come right off of on any of your option from a passing standpoint? Like what are some of the things? Well, like I remember the triple option, like the home run play, we would come off that. We would come off and we'd run the post with a little banana route, you know, and
the wheel route
home run every time.
Yeah, the wheel
yeah.
route. That's
right.
Yeah, we ran that. I like that against a 4-14. And here's a little secret of the wheel route is if you run it against a 4-14, you know, it's really tough for them to defend. But it's almost impossible if you take your slot and instead of just releasing them, you bring him inside like you're going to block the inside backer.
Right.
And release behind the strong safety.
Got it.
Or the wheel backer. Because he doesn't even see him then. He doesn't even know he exists. And the post will take the corner out of the way and the guy will be wide open.
Yep.
Every time.
And then, but the route that I love was what I call the stretch route.
Yep.
So the play side, we could run it to the boundary or the field. Now, no matter in our passing game, no matter what we called, the boundary route was always an out, and the field route was always an in at 14 yards. The out route was 12 back to 10. So we could call it to the boundary of the field, stretch route. And the reason we did that is because we didn't want to throw an out route across to the other hash mark.
That's a far throw.
Unless I brought in Tommy DeVito, that wasn't going to be a route to throw. Yeah. I love that.
And listen,
Yeah.
TD was we worked with TD. He's been to our showcases and stuff when he was at Boston.
He's been a great boost to the Giants. But anyway,
his agent is your cousin.
Is who?
Your cousin.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Peyton Manning. That was a nice little. Peyton gave a nice little plug to him. Call him Slimy, but anyway. Yeah, that was good. Good job, Peyton. I'll remember.
Good job.
That.
Yeah,
anyway,
thanks, buddy.
So what we did is if we run into the field, the wide out does a 14-yard in. The play side slot, whether he lines up in twins or tight, is going to run between the goalposts. Okay, so he's going to get an arc and run between the goalposts. The backside guy is going to do the backside wide out's going to do a 12-yard out. The other two backs are going to fake the triple. The quarterback is going to catch, pivot, rock forward, rock back, and look at the stretch. Unless the strong safety covers the stretch route, he's going to throw the stretch at a depth of 18 yards with the point of the ball coming down.
Yeah, so he wants to.
Okay, so here's the way we taught it. You know,
So like
the
a
$5 kiddie pools that you get in Kmart,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Walmart. You know, they're little. We used to put kiddie pools out, and I had the quarterbacks just throwing the ball into the kiddie pool in the summer. You know, just have, it cost me next to nothing. I tried a trash barrel. It was a little bit too tough, but the kiddie pool they could get. And so he would throw the stretch into the kiddie pool at 18 yards. So until it became automatic.
Right.
Now, if the strong safety covered that guy, first of all, the outside linebacker is not going to cover him no matter what. Because even if he freezes, the guy's by him.
Yeah.
Okay? If the strong safety covers him, then he looks to the in route. Okay, if the in route, the only guy that can cover the in route is the outside backer who's tied up. But if the outside backer runs there, there's nobody for the slot in motion that's faking the triple to block. So he just takes it out wide, and you have a high-low into flare. But most of the times, the in route is going to be open because the outside backer cannot he can't check run and get far enough wide to cover the in route. Now, if it's a 3-shell, or say they roll up to cover 3, the quarterback will throw the backside out. There's nobody to get under that. Now, if they play press, the backside out becomes a fade, and again, you get the PAT team ready.
Right.
Okay?
That's awesome. Yeah, that makes
like
it.
that?
Yeah, I got it. Derek's writing it all down. So
Listen, it's honest. It's just, to me, it's, everybody takes from everybody. Everybody's got certain intricacies, right? Oh, this is my offense. It's all, everybody just uses everybody's
I know. I've
stuff.
stolen more ideas from people than you can imagine.
And you just, and
Al
listen.
Mummy and Mike Leach, may rest in peace, were good friends of mine.
That's my guy.
Spent time with them. They came and heard me speak for 3 hours in Orlando because they were intrigued with the gun triple.
Well, listen,
I also
same
ran
thing
a
with
triple
Manny,
screen
right?
that
Like
they
Manny did the same thing. Yeah, like Manny Matsakis, it was the same thing when he was on staff with Leach at Texas Tech, right? Like he took those intricacies of whatever. I mean, like I said, I learned so much about how Manny took that run and shoot and adapted it to his triple shoot. And now at Butler, we were doing this stuff in the mid 90s when nobody was coming out in MP, right?
Well,
so he's always I've always been
about
like
shooting the gaps. And again, the jet sweep is another answer to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But here's the other thing that I got from Manny. by putting the jet sweep in, remember I told you I had Durante 100, 5'7", 175. Well,
Right.
we have a 2-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter. I don't want him getting any more hits.
Yep.
So the jet sweep was an answer to attack the perimeter without using the quarterback. So that's what that provided for me. And I got that from Manny. Manny taught me the jet sweeps. And then he used to run the tailback zone off it when Shea was his guy. So what I did,
the two we have the jet sweep and the belly, you know, the pop out series. It's what we called it the whole time.
Yeah.
It was so many plays off of that motion.
Because Manny's Greek, I called it Spyro Gyro. Spyro was the sweep and Gyro was the give.
I love it.
Yeah.
And even when he went to when he was at Widener for a couple years, and he started doing the accelerator motion where he would bring the guy towards the line of scrimmage and then bang the jet sweep across. Oh, like innovators, guys that are just doing stuff to just, all right, let's see what happens and if it goes, you know. So it's crazy to see how it all kind of comes together and matches up.
Manny was a great innovator. And he's still, I mean, I can't believe nobody's hired him to help their offense, because I've seen some horrible offenses, you know, that could really use his help. He's really, really bright guy and a good friend.
Where do you see, so like in today's game and the triple option, so like even like Navy and Army have like stepped away from being under center all the time, and gone and gun, and with the pass game and all the mesh concepts and where do you see like the triple option be, especially out of gun, be continuing to kind of like evolve next?
Well, I think they could go back and do that stuff, but like we put the triple option, kind of incorporated with the quick game. So, for example, we ran a shovel pass to the tailback, but the quarterback could read the outside backer. If the outside backer was there, he would throw the stick route. So we had the fade stick combination on the outside, shovel on the inside. And then you could do the same thing with a dive. You know, in other words, if the linebacker stays there, you pull and throw the stick route. And that's really, really tough on that outside backer. That puts him in a conflict that it doesn't have an answer. And if the corner stays tight, the quarterback has the same read. If the corner's low, you drill the fade route in there.
Go get it,
Noam Lazzone's his inside zone with the guy who goes in motion out for the swing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's essentially almost a passing version of your triple option.
Absolutely, it is. And see, we did stuff like we started doing this too. We would go jet motion to the left, triple to the right.
Got it.
And that was tough because the secondary, somebody had to move, and that would always leave one less guy to block there. So, for example, when I was at Charleston, we had small slots. We didn't have a back over 5'9". I did it because of the team picture. I'm not real tall, so I wanted short guys around. So, but anyway, I had a slot 5'6", about 170, who's faster than you can imagine. I had this other kid, Aaron Higdon, who's 5'9", 180, signed with the Lions and was the fastest guy in the 20-yard shuttle in their mini camp, the fastest. So anyway, I had those speed guys, but they were small. So if I sent one of them in motion, I guarantee you they'd either roll or run the backer with them. So I didn't have to block anybody with that guy.
Right, because you just took it out by motion.
Yeah. And still run triple to that side that they vacated, and they'd be a man short. So we did stuff like that. And then, we run jet motion right, and then run the fake the jet, fake the dive, and the dive guy would curl around, and we would throw the screen back to him, away from, to the weak side. Because again, they'd be running with the motion.
Right. They'd be like over pursuing.
So
like
we did a lot of different things, incorporating or incorporating the gun triple as the base, and then off that. You know what I mean? And as I said, the stick concept was really a good one. I mean that was a no-brainer basically.
It's because it's pretty much it's an automatic win almost every time.
And you could do things like, for example, we did all kinds of unbalanced formations.
Yep.
Like ends over and like we would go like twins left and run the stick RPO to the right. You know what I mean? Because you fake the dot. You don't need a pitch man because you're using the stick route as the pitch.
Right.
You see what I mean?
What is it's so I don't know if you heard, but like they have this injunction. I mean, Derek, we're talking about it briefly. They have with this whole transfer portal thing, which has been crazy.
Oh yeah.
They just instituted. So for basketball, the West Virginia Attorney General successfully blocked people having only one transfer for free. So now they could transfer in basketball for 14 days as much as they want. And if that's probably going to get adopted in football eventually globally, which means you can just transfer whenever. My thought process is if you always have new defensive players every single year, if you put in the gun triple option, how are they going to handle it? Because you got new players. You can't, right? You go get yourself 4 running backs, one that can throw, and you got yourself a stable offense because no one wants running backs anymore either, right? So,
the transfer portal. I mean, like some people make decisions without ever wondering what's going to happen from the decision. I think that's what the NCAA, because they brought in the portal and the NIL at the same time,
right? Yeah. And they just it's like here it is. And it was kind of one of those like, hey, we'll see how it happens and we'll kind of figure it out on the go.
Yeah.
They better figure something out because it's out of control.
It's out of control. And what Bill Narduzzi Pat Narduzzi at Pitt. Bill Narduzzi, I knew his dad really well, Bill, because he was at Youngstown. But anyway.
Youngstown.
Youngstown has good football. I tell you, I really enjoy it.
It's a Matt Sack's world. It's a Bo Pelini, right?
Yeah, he used to. I used to recruit there, and when Narduzzi was at Youngstown, as soon as I walked in his office, he would take me some Italian joint for dinner, and we would pick up Don Bucci, who was at Mooney. Stoops' father was at Mooney.
Yep.
And Bob Dove was at Youngstown with. So it was a great little bunch of guys, but Youngstown was great football. But what happened to Pitt was Lincoln Riley, their best wideout, came in and told Narduzzi he was going into the portal because USC had offered him $1 million to go there.
Jordan Addison.
He said, "Wait a minute, you're not even in the portal. How did they offer you the NIL?"
That don't matter.
Yeah, so there's no guardrails on it. There's no enforcement of that kind of policy, and you're only asking for trouble by putting those two things together.
100%.
You're making free agency. You're
exactly
destroying
what it's
college football.
Yep,
exactly as we know it.
And high school recruiting.
High school recruiting, yeah, like you said.
If this 14-day window becomes if that becomes a year-round thing, meaning right now you can only have like one free transfer unless you're a grad transfer. You have one free but if they this 14-day window to do it for basketball, if that becomes a reality in football, that means that anybody can transfer as many times as they want. Like which is wild. And high school, like I feel like remember Derek, we talked about, like I was saying, it's kind of like the minor leagues. We go
it's like AAA ball or A ball.
I mean, what is it? What are you going to do? You're going to go in as like a D2 player, catch 50 balls, right, as a receiver, and now you go up to FCS, you catch 50 balls again.
Listen,
and now you go up to
we're seeing it right now where we are, right? Monmouth just produced a receiver, right? Kid had like broke records, had a game this year where he had 300 yards receiving, like most catches ever in Monmouth history, all this stuff. Hey, I got 1 year left. I'm out. Bye, gone.
Where's he going?
He's now looking. He's got a bunch of offers from all of these big time power.
Well,
schools.
you know what happened in West Virginia this year? Because they've been messing around with this transfer rule a lot, and nobody likes it. Because what happened in West Virginia is there were super teams, like everybody transferred to Hurricane. You know what I mean? They
all go to one. They just figure it out and say, "Hey, let's all go to this high school together and just dominate."
And they destroyed everybody they played.
Really? Right.
Yeah, and then but they've been, and that's really wrong. But in Charleston, you could transfer from any of the schools in Charleston to another school, but only once. That's the way it used to be, and even that was bad because, like, if one coach kicked a kid off the team, he would just go play for another one.
Right. Florida, same thing, right? Like if you're in Dade County, you can go to any school in Dade County. Now, what they've recently just done within the last couple of years in Jersey is they've done the same thing. You now have a one-time transfer, like freebie, where you can go to another school and not have to sit out, unless you're gonna be a senior.
Well, that's really bad. It's really bad.
And in Jersey,
and eventually that's going to go to the way I see. I may not happen right away, but the way I see it is like, okay, so now everyone's at one time. So then now someone's going to get in a situation. Correct me if you think I'm wrong. Someone's getting in a situation. They transferred to a place. It didn't work out, right? They transferred.
Right.
Someone else maybe came in and took your job. Now you're like, I want to transfer again, and they're going to sue, right? Yep. And they're going to say, all right, we're not dealing with this because these associations don't have the money to fight this stuff.
Right,
so they're going to say, you know what? Anyone can transfer whenever they want, and that's how this, and it's all from the top down. I mean, obviously coming from college all the way down, right? So they're doing it in college. Right. Now you're trying to tell people in high school, no, you got to play with your high school, and it evolves to one transfer. Then eventually there's be like, well, if they could do it, why can't we
do it? I can do it, right? It's like, hey, we got to stay with the Jones.
Yeah, that's exactly right. No, you're right on. You hit the nail on the head with that. I mean, that's exactly what's going to happen. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out, but apparently administrators can't. Administrators, sometimes I think like one of the requirements to be an administrator is to lose your mind first. Be completely void of common sense.
Here.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I have no common sense. What? Time to be an administrator.
Yeah. I better put you on the college football playoff committee.
Holy smokes.
That's one of the requirements to being on that committee is you have to literally.
One of the requirements is know nothing about football. That's the first requirement.
Let's hire politicians.
Yeah. Let's do
hire politicians.
Whole bunch of
to pick the 4 teams that should be in there.
We want to make sure we have one moron, one of this, one of that. I mean, come on.
Quota.
The whole. It's funny is people have. I did a podcast Wednesday, and they asked me about the Florida State thing because I had written that I thought it was a really bad thing that they didn't get in. A bad look. And because now, and the people and everybody that argued against me, and even the other guy on the podcast said, well, Alabama's a better team. Well, how do you know that unless you play? I mean, do you say, okay, Buster Douglas can't fight Mike Tyson because Mike Tyson automatically you give Mike Tyson the win. He's a 40-1 shot. Or do you tell Jim Valvano, no, Houston's a national champ. You don't play them.
Yeah.
You don't know. Now, Florida State played in the playoffs. It would be ugly. Watching them against Louisville was painful at times. However, they did what they had to do to win.
Exactly.
Fans don't get into defense, but Florida State played great. Yes,
they might have one of the best. They're like they're a top 3 defense. Like
that's what I'm saying. I mean,
absolutely.
So when they play somebody, it's going to be a boring war. but they might win that war.
And that's the problem. People don't want to see a boring war. They don't want to see, the Vikings last or 2 weeks ago, whatever, winning 3-0. Nobody wants to see that. That's the NFL different, but it's all about, optics. How many people can I get to the game? Are people going to watch it? Right. It's all money-based driven. And that's kind of like, they literally showed their true colors by choosing and going this route.
A little bit of part of it too is TCU got waxed last year.
Smoked.
And so
that's what's fresh in their mind.
I think it was unfortunate, fresh in their mind too, that like last year
we did this
put
last year.
TCU in who probably wasn't as good as the other teams, but they were undefeated and they got whacked. Actually, they beat
they won the first round.
They won the first game, but obviously it ran into a buzzsaw. So our ratings, the people who don't really care about football at halftime,
we're like later.
See, the score is out of control. They turn off the game, so
that's not what they want, right? Like
now, that's all they really want. There's 6 teams that possibly could be in there. Who are the 4 teams? This is how I think they think about it. Who are the 4 teams that are going to give us the game that's going to have everybody watch it the whole entire time?
Right.
Least chance of a blow. Florida State could get in there and shut a team down and win a game. Or it could happen. What could have happened is, whatever, depending on their seed, a team got up on them and it got crazy, right? And that's what they were. That's to me. That's what I think they're thinking. I'm not saying it's right, but that's what they were thinking as far as how the thought process on it.
Well, there's no doubt. I mean, they all had reasons, and that makes a lot of sense. The TCU thing has been brought up a lot.
Right.
Because one underdog gets crushed, that doesn't mean
another one ain't gonna make the
Exactly. And I think that's part of the fun too. That's part of the fun is when TCU did win that first game, you were like, wait a minute, is TCU going to actually win the national?
Right. Like, where did they come from?
A team that doesn't have 5 stars on it, are they actually going to win the national championship? So I thought that was really exciting. It just happens that Georgia was so good last year. I mean, they were. They were
Alabama,
they're still so good.
Alabama struggled against Auburn, who was not very good.
Right.
Correct.
Alabama struggled against a few teams during the year.
Right.
And
Auburn,
they were downright lucky.
Crushed them.
Auburn, downright lucky. I mean, they hit a 4th and 31.
Yeah. And that throw.
Yeah. So. I mean,
I bet you that corner's in the transfer portal. that corner from Auburn is in the transfer portal now.
The fans made him go into transfer portal at Auburn.
We don't know where that portal is leading to. It's in there. But,
that's right. He may be an alternative dimension.
I do love the fact, though, that Texas is now relevant again.
Oh, I do too. I mean. See, here's the guy that really is the most underrated coach in America is Kyle Flood. Kyle Flood, when he was with Alabama, they could run the ball on anybody.
Look at all the backs that are in the NFL that came from when he took over the line, after he left Rutgers. And listen, he was in our backyard, right? And he was very open, like, hey, any of you guys want everything. So he was a great resource in state, just like Shiano is. Like, he's an open door type guy, but he's also a little closer, tight knit, little old school kind of thing. But Kyle Flood, man, I mean,
he's
like one of the most underrated guys.
He's one of the most underrated guys in the country right now.
His line coaching ability is insane.
Like we said, listen, Dave, we have this conversation all the time, right? Some guys are just better position coaches than they are in the big picture stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I love about Kyle Flood? You talk about double teams with the triple option out of spread. He is the king of his double teams. The way that his guys do it. I used to, when he was the head coach at Rutgers, I would go watch, and when he was a line coach for Shiano, I would go watch how he would teach the double team and when they would come off that double team to pick up the guy, and the timing on it was so impeccable. Like, the hardest thing about the double team, as you know, is
when to get off.
When do I get off? All right, I know I'm driving this guy, right? I'm hip to hip. I'm driving. You can practice that enough to get that. The question, the problem comes when that linebacker comes over the top to get off and get yourself in the right position. Because if guys can't do that, that linebacker just makes the play all day, right?
Right,
100%.
And he teaches it so well. And
he does.
And every place he's gone, and the backs hug that double team, and they know they understand that part of it, and that's so in sync. And I always thought he got like at Rutgers.
Yeah, he kind of got like
a raw deal because he followed Shiano, who had
Mr. New Jersey.
Success. Flood had a lot of success. I mean, he had a lot of,
you know what I mean? And then he had one little like off the field issue, and then all of a sudden everybody's got a bad taste in their mouth. And it's like,
he got a horrible deal there. And the thing about you were talking about the backs, Texas is on their third string tailback. And he's still getting 100 yards every game.
I mean, listen, the guy they just produced is probably the rookie of the year for the Falcons. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to replace that guy, even if you're Texas.
It's a great combination with Sarkisian. Because Sarkisian, a lot of people don't like him, but I'll say this for him. He's the best play designer in college football, in my mind.
He's always been a great offensive mind.
Braum is a great play designer. Those guys design great plays. Manny was a great play designer. You know, he had a way. He was an innovator, and he designed plays like that motion you were talking about. And there's some guys that are great play designers. Sarkisian is one of them, but he can be a great play designer. But Flood is the guy who makes it work.
Right.
That's what he needs. When you're a great play designer, you need a line guy who can put your play design and make it work.
And match it with a protection or match it with like this is what because if you think about it, that line guy, right? We got 11 guys on the field. 5 of those guys, like that's what if those 5 you have 5 guys that you have to get in sync, right? And they're your 5. Like you're coaching the most guys that are on the field at a time. No matter what, I could be the receivers coach and have, I have 4 guys, but there's a reason that a lot of staffs have outside receiver coaches and inside receiver coaches, right? It's rare to see a guy. It's like, hey, you're the guards coach, you're the tackles coach, you're the center. No, man, you're the O-line coach.
Right. Well, if you're a flexbone team and you're a receiver coach, you're actually on vacation.
Yeah, I love these guys. They're like, hey,
go down the shore for the day.
I love it. It's like, hey, these guys come in and they're like, yeah, I coached receivers, this, that, this, and it's like, oh, really? Like, oh, yeah, my guy had, 20, he had, 20 catches this year. Like, 20 catches. Like, I got guys that have 18 in the game. What are we talking about,
No, I think your point was really good about
Kyle Flood that I love. He's an Iona guy.
Yes, he is.
He's an Iona guy.
Jerry Flora, who used to be the head coach at William Patterson.
Jerry Flora is a really good friend of mine.
He's now up in Sleepy Hollow.
And he's done a great job at Sleepy Hollow. Was one of these schools that the demographics there changed dramatically.
Huge. And still one of the best mascots I've ever seen. They ride out with that real horse.
I know,
that dude with no head, man. Woo!
It's great. But he's done a great job at Sleepy Hollow. I mean, because they had really lost their way because they were in a high brackets. Their population is big,
right? But they just don't have
mostly
football
Hispanic,
people.
And they don't play football, and so he was kind of caught in that. But
we talk about it all the time.
Jerry Flores, I'll tell you one thing. The thing I love about Jerry Flores, he'll outwork anybody.
Everybody.
He is a workaholic, and he works hard. He's another Iona guy. I really respect him.
Listen, I went.
And the notable. I had to go quickly to Wikipedia, and the notable former players in Iona. They only list 5, and two of them were. One is you, and the other one is Kyle Flood. And then they got. I don't know who these other guys are, but Mazza, Day, Pegna. But yes, you and Kyle Flood are listed as the legends of Iona.
I'll tell you what's crazy about this is my freshman year I was at Sacred Heart University of Connecticut, right? FCS program, 1AA,
right?
And we played Iona. The next year I transfer back home. I come to Montclair State. Who's my first game? I'm playing Iona. My first college start was against Iona in a hurricane situation. And then 2 years later, they kill the program. And it's like, wow, like that's
a lot of
tough
people.
to do.
A lot of people have never forgiven them for that, killing the program. There's no reason to, and they did it in the summer when a lot of guys were on vacation. The board.
And we had they couldn't
the
fight.
The board
it.
was on vacation, and they pulled a fast one, and as a result, that president got fired.
Well, I mean, listen, you're losing a ton of. You kill the program, you're talking 80 guys, 80 students,
right? I think most of them paid something, right? Because it was Iona.
They were like a mid-major, like a not a full scholarship. Right. They only had like a couple, so a lot of those guys are still paying tuition. Now you kill the program, you just lost, however much in revenue for tuition.
And it was if you saw the whole history of there's a fellow that wrote a book called it's about the history of Iona College sports, and the football was such a big part of the campus. I mean, when Valvano was at Iona, he used to tell me that you have a built-in fan base and we have to build one.
Correct.
And that just goes to tell you, that how that was.
Bad to the bone, Coach?
Huh?
I love it. That's a good ringer right there.
That's probably your wife.
Yeah. In 2 notes, I figured it out. Bad to the bone.
Bad to the bone.
That's
That's I'm old school.
I like it. I love it. No, that's really it's actually that's a shame that they got.
It was.
That was a big move by the whole MAC too at the time.
Listen, when I was coming in, when I went to Sacred Heart, and it was 2004 season, University of New Haven had just killed their program, right? Iona was on shaky
but New Haven's back.
Northeastern had killed their program. Fairfield University had killed their program. It was like, wow.
The thing about Fairfield,
Boston University.
Boston University had killed their program.
Played against Boston University, played against Northeastern. Boston University won the Yankee Conference one year when
Chris Palmer was there.
Yeah.
Yep. What's interesting about that is how they all dropped it at once. Like Siena dropped it.
Yeah.
Canisius dropped it. Iona dropped it.
LaSalle
dropped it, and there's no you can't really figure out a reason for it. Fairfield had just built a new football facility and dropped football before they even used it. I knew the AD there, who was from New Rochelle. He was a baseball player, and they dropped the program. They just finished the new facility. I mean, you talk about, not having a plan. I mean, this is ridiculous, but
they were a good program. It's not like they were like
they weren't
losers.
Who's that? Right. Fred? Was that Fred? Who's there at the time as the head coach? Fred
Mariani.
That's it.
Yeah. He was a good guy, and the thing is, like when you figure that, like Marist.
That's another one.
At football, and Iona dropped it. I mean, what are you kidding me?
I know, I agree.
Yeah, the guys that play. I was just with 6 former Iona football players were here in Pittsburgh, and we went to the Pitt Florida State game, and I had a great time together. But all of them were sick about the whole dropping of the program and things like that.
I mean, how would you feel if you're a former player and your alma mater now just says, hey, man, you gave us 4 years of this, that, and you feel like a certain type of way, and now all of a sudden that's gone? Like,
I know. It's really tough. It's really tough to handle.
It's part of this world, right? And now you see all of these schools, and I'm sure it's interesting for you, having been at the level that you were, right? That D2 world really gets forgotten about, and people just don't understand how good that football really is. Just because there's a 2 next to the D, right? And then you even get a level lower, and you start saying D3. People want no part of it.
As you get further west, it's better and better because there's no 1 AA's.
Same thing like Florida. There's no 3s. There's no 2s. It's all 1, right? It's all Division 1 in the South. And then the Northeast has, damn, look at
FCS
New Jersey. We have more Division III programs in New Jersey. It's out of control.
Right. Yeah. Well, New Jersey, like Montclair State, used to always be a power in Division III. And who was the other one? The one
You
that
have
changed the
Rowan.
name.
You have Keene.
Oh, Rowan,
TCNJ,
yeah.
TCNJ, right?
Rowan.
Like you
Rowan
go
was
over the
power.
listen.
Yeah.
Portland is in the Division III. If they're in the Stag Bowl.
Wow, who are they playing?
Oh, great question.
Harding?
It's crazy because it's not Mount Union, it's not Wisconsin Whitewater. You know what I mean? It's like all these other schools that and it's crazy. Like we talk about this all the time. You look at this whole transfer portal thing now, right? And the guys in the transfer portal, you look at the Ivy League. If you're the best player on your Ivy League team, you now have a Power 5 offer.
Right, definitely.
And especially if you're any type of big man in terms of offensive line, defensive line, man, even if you're a smaller, undersized lineman, you're going to get an opportunity at a bigger level because there's just none of those guys available, which is why I think you look at Dion literally over in Colorado, remaking his offensive line in a matter of however weeks within this whole thing. Okay, wow.
You know what else is happening with the portal that people aren't talking about is coaches are suggesting players get in the portal. Like the quarterback from NC State was upset because his coach told him to get in the portal because he's not going to play anymore.
Right. At what point do they?
Yeah, that also that's tough.
Wow, guys don't look at that and say wow, coach is kind of looking out for me, allowing me to.
That's gone.
It's more of
that's gone to an extent,
right?
I mean you have some places where that are, maybe it might exist at the lower levels because as much as you're able to, but I think at the higher levels, for the most part, it's like NFL light. It's
yeah.
Look at Notre Dame.
Well, they don't recruit high school kids anymore.
No,
there's some schools that. And they brag about it.
Coach,
they brag about it.
Coach,
they brag about it.
This is like, unless you're one of those top 50 5-star walk into the building and play, you're not coming from high school anymore, man.
That's right.
We used to take, 15 high school kids. Maybe we're taking 5. Maybe.
There's 200 kids 200 to 250 kids, maybe the top 300 kids. Those kids will still go. The other 2,200 that used to go are going to go FCS or lower. I mean, and look to move up. Which think about where you were coaching.
I know.
You developed a superstar.
Those schools are now basically JUCOs, right?
You develop a superstar, and then next thing you know, you develop a superstar.
Yep.
And all right, great. Next year we have him returning. He's gone.
Yeah, it's real. It's
hey,
really
thank
terrible.
you for developing me, and now I can go and do what
it's really terrible. And Notre Dame, I'll tell you, I'm really upset with Notre Dame. I mean, that's what they were. You realize when Lou Holtz was there, which is quite a ways away, but they weren't allowed any transfers and no red shirts.
Because of is that because of that academic stuff?
Back then he couldn't have any red shirts. So
that's crazy. They've
gone from that to rent a quarterback for a year.
That's a great way to put it. I never even thought of that.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. This will be the third one in 3 years.
And here's what's crazy is you look at the kid Sam Hartman, right? And all right, amazing 4 years at Wake Forest, breaks every record. All right. The ultimate me move now, right? Hey, I'm going to go to Notre Dame. I'm going to play on NBC every weekend.
Right.
I'm the Notre Dame quarterback, right? Ultimate me move. Hey, we're in a bowl game. Nah. I'm good. I'm good. And now the backup kid is actually a Jersey kid, Bergen Catholic, Steve Aguela. He's sitting there, I'm butchering his last name, and he's sitting there oh, great. Look here, I get my first start. I'm going to play in the bowl game. Let's go. Hey, buddy, guess what? You're going to play in this bowl game, but next year, here comes, a Heisman candidate and the guy from Duke. So
I know it's not the way it should be. And coaches deserve a lot of the blame too for doing it because they did it. And Sonny Dykes was really the first one. The first year of the portal,
Wow.
I think he had 45 transfers.
Look at Dion.
And Dion, of course,
he wiped his whole roster.
It's just not the way it's supposed to be. And
business,
go on.
Business,
and again, I might be corny, but one of the things, college football was about teaching values.
Yes,
it really was. And I might sound corny, but I really believe that. And the value of loyalty was one of them. The value of commitment, the value of courage, class, integrity.
Hard work.
My motto was hard work works. And that's gone. Now, if you work a kid hard, he might leave.
Or he's going to bring you up on bullying charges.
or whatever, yeah. Yeah, thank God they didn't have that when I was coaching. I would have been.
Oh, we're God!
You'd be doing this from jail now.
I say that all the time. I say, look, if my coaches coached now, they'd be in prison.
I'd be coaching from behind bars.
Football has become like a reflection, and in the time of America, as you go through, like as America became, as civil rights became a thing, and integration became a thing. Football evolved with it, right? And all the way through, football kept being in the forefront of evolving in the right way. Well, right. now you have a society where kids do whatever they want. They think, and now football's on the backside of it. Whereas at one time they were as America evolved in the right direction, football immediately evolved with it. And now you have is when America starts to evolve in the wrong direction, football
follows that as well,
evolving in the wrong direction.
Well, again, it goes back to those values. I mean, football was supposed to be, college football anyway, not pro football, but college football was supposed to be a part of somebody's education. And that education was, teaching the values of hard work and the values of commitment and the values of, my first year as a player, I mean, I was cannon fodder, but I learned a lot of lessons about that,
right.
About sticking it out and working hard. And then,
you learn about grit. You learn about things aren't fair, right? But if you, and it used to be you put your head down and you just went to work and you hoped for the best. And sometimes it worked out and sometimes it didn't. And if it did, great. But at the end of the day, even if it didn't, it still taught me that lesson about life's not fair. Sometimes you just got to get it done and do what you got to do. And ultimately, hopefully it pays off. Those values now, coaches are under such pressure, right, to win now.
Correct.
They don't even get a true opportunity to even get a full class through 4 years of school.
Right. The other thing, Derek, is that's also, when we're talking about values, that's also one of the things that set me off about the Florida State thing. Because instead of rewarding a value of holy crow, we lost our starting quarterback, and we managed to close out the season and win our conference championship. And we're being told by guys on a committee. Jim Valvano said a camel was a horse put together by a committee. That's another Valvano quote. So, yeah. So anyway, now you're being told by a committee you're not good enough to play in our tournament because your quarterback isn't there.
Right. Don't worry about the top defense you have in the country.
What values are you teaching, playoff committee? Are you teaching the values of, hey, you got a bad break, some adversity, you stuck through it, and now you get to play at the big dance? No.
Yep. Not
Instead,
happening.
we're going to tell you, you're not at your best. You don't get to play in our tournament. And that's the message they sent to everybody. And that's why people are so upset.
Right.
A lot of people are phrasing it differently, but it goes back to destroying the values that you want football to teach.
Yep.
And as I said, like sometimes people say, oh, you're corny about this. Well, maybe I am, but that's what I believe. I believe that, football is a tool or a vehicle to teach kids things. And, the great coaches, you look at, Paterno and John Wooden and those guys, they taught values. Kareem and Bill Walton talks about John Wooden.
Oh yeah,
So,
he's like he's you know.
yeah.
And I'll listen to him even if he is all over the place because he at least keeps it interesting, bro.
Well, Coach, it's been great having you on.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah. I had a.
you're by the way, I got to give you a round of applause. You, first of all, just very insightful, but you also set today our new record for the length of time that we had a guest on the podcast. Yes, an hour. We don't really like. And the only reason I have to cut it a couple minutes, I can't say the word short, but it's because I got to go get a sauna. So I have a sauna time at 12. So if I didn't have that, I'd stay out with you for 2 hours. We'd break a record that would never be broken again. But no, absolutely, an hour and 40 minutes. I mean, that we say like we've had so many, obviously a lot of great guests on, but when you stretch to over an hour, we say, wow, this conversation must be going really good.
That's how
an hour
Well,
and 40 minutes.
You can't
Greatness, Coach. Greatness.
On the same podcast. They'll talk. The two tallies will talk all day.
Listen, I get it all the time, right? Coach Schumann, Dave's always like, "Hey, you gotta pump it. Put two Italians." Listen. If I got paid words per minute, I'd be loaded.
Valvano used to come into the office every day and give me he lived 5 minutes from the school, but would talk about his ride in for 15 minutes. No matter what, regardless of what I was doing, he'd give me
pre-cell phone era
of his ride from his house to the school every day.
That's great.
You wouldn't believe this. This squirrel jumped in front of my car.
New Rochelle had a lot of stories.
He was great for me. That guy. I'll tell
That's
you.
amazing,
Really
Coach.
was.
That's amazing.
Coach, it's been great.
Guys and,
thank you.
Coach, appreciate you really taking the time.
On.
Like I said, absolutely phenomenal conversation.
The only thing I would ask you is if you could send me a link to this.
Of course.
Yes.
So I could put it on my website.
Yeah,
absolutely,
Derek,
Coach.
Go grab that.
Yep.
I'll send it over to Derek, and he'll get it over to you.
Super.
Coach, thanks so much for coming on. It was a ton of fun. We're going to have you come on when your book comes out. When your book comes out, let's have you back on.
Super.
All right.
Great talk.
Thanks, Coach.
Have a great day.
Have a great weekend.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That was phenomenal. Phenomenal. I do have to run too. I'll call you on the road. That was, honestly, we've had some great guests on to make me laugh. No one has made me laugh like this.
I was forewarned, and look, maybe wrong choice of words, but I was told, listen, you're gonna laugh, and it's gonna be a phenomenal, no matter what it is, no matter what you talk about, you got him on your gig, it's gonna be a great pod.
Oh, it was great.
There's so much information, I
had to write down the camel one. That is.
Oh, dude.
A bunch of them were hilarious. You probably wrote them down.
He who controls the race wins. He who controls the pace wins the race. Oh yes. Man.
If you wrote them down, you gotta tweet those out because they were so good. Oh man. Anyway, I'll let you go. I'll call you from the road. Great podcast.
All right, guys. That was a good one.
Get us out here.
Absolutely.
And then we'll go.
All right, next time.
Great podcast. Great job.